AI and how they react, the map, and how it was originally going to be made in custom servers. The most recent dev interview with Mara had a ton of info, and I'm hoping soon that instead of talking about it, we're going to turn that into playing it. So Greyzone has went up against Tarkov in comparison to the two games. Something similar that has been discussed between them, or at least in the original design aspect of Greyzone, was the fact that there actually was not supposed to be this huge, massive map, but rather they broke up like Tarkov into very small places and you would actually load into them rather than being a large map. Now, I'm not exactly specific on how exactly they decided to change that, but from the interview, what I gathered from it is that they got more people to help and they felt more comfortable going forward with a very large map. So it's an interesting take about how they actually originally were just going to make small maps, and then now they're turning it into the massive map that we have now. So Greyzone has very heavily talked about how they have a big PvE interest. Like that is the main point of the game, is the PvP. And with that, people are interested about the AI. So what Mara did in this interview is he talked about comparing Greyzone with like Dark Souls. So he talks about how you can be very, very skilled, have the equipment you need to succeed, but if you take it for granted and slip up, you'll be punished for it. So essentially, you can walk around, one tap this, one tap that, but if you take it too easy or it looks too easy and you don't take it seriously, you will be punished for it. Continuing on with the AI, he talks about how the AI will actually aim and have recoil rather than just, having a spot that they aim at or, pinpoint or whatever, regardless if you're 5 yards away or 500 yards away, they just pick a spot. That is not the case. They're actually going to aim towards you, not to a particular spot, and they're also going to have their own recoil. And depending on the tier of the enemy that you have and the equipment that they have, that recoil will get better or worse, and they'll be more accurate or less accurate. So I thought that was really, really cool to think about. But when you think about actual recoil, you're thinking about you as a player. So when you actually shoot at someone, you have to adjust your mouse or your controller, whatever it is, and you have to adjust to that. And then based on the equipment that you have, it's easier or harder. So it's basically mirroring or trying to mirror what we do as players in video games themselves. Now, one of the aspects that they really talked about and, made some jokes about with like random dice roll, right? So they're talking about, this player's doing really well, so let's randomly throw a dice out there and make it hard for them and they get actually one tapped. Or somebody's not doing well, so let's not kill them. So they didn't want to make it like that, obviously. They wanted to make it to where you gain knowledge from every interaction that you have in the game. So you go in and you die and you're like, wow, I didn't know they were there, or I didn't do this right. They don't want you going into the game and you're frustrated because you didn't even have a chance to even learn from it or be like, why did that happen? So they want to try to pinpoint as much as possible, being able to make it fair, but make it punishing if you do make a mistake, and then have the learning opportunity to figure out what you did wrong. Now, a very interesting concern that a lot of people have, and even myself, I've really thought about it a lot, is going back to get your stuff after you die. So simply not going to like a death screen when you die, just going back to the fob and being able to go back, call a heli, get your stuff, and then go back into the fight. So what Mara did is he talked about like MMOs, right? So you think about like, World of Warcraft, Elder Scrolls, Final Fantasy, take your pick, whatever you want to talk about. He talked about in MMOs how you have like, your graveyard scene where you have your soul and then you have to traverse back to where you died to get your stuff. That's the kind of the aspect he talked about. And it makes a lot of sense because this game is a persistent world. It is a real life breathing world. It's not like you just get put in timeout when you die. So not deflating that balloon. So what we're talking about is, when you die, essentially, like in Tarkov, for example, if you die when you're with friends, it's like, hey, the balloon just deflates. It's like, hey, let's get your gear. Let's get out. The raid's kind of over, right? So with Greyzone, it changed a little bit. So, you die and you lose that gear, but the gear is still there. So you have to make a decision, when you go back and you're like, do your friends need to attack? Do your friends need to just get your stuff and leave? Do they need to defend your body so you can get back and help? And then on the other side, it's all right. Do we need to push and end this fight quick so we don't have to worry about this person coming back? Do we need to angle ourselves in a different way? Do we need to set ourselves up to where we'll cut this person off if they get back to where they need to be? So there's a lot of different options that go through both sides. It's not just one side or the other. And I think it's going to make people make decisions to do something rather than just sit and wait. Because I know when I played other games, you just kind of sit and wait because there's so much riding on dying, because if you die, it just deflates everything. So I feel like Greyzone is going to do a good job, at least in the fact of like not deflating that balloon, but giving you a chance to have different options. I've thought about this a lot, and I'm talking about, the never ending battle. People just come back in, come back in. But when you sit here and think about it, you are going to have your screen. You're going to go back to the fob. You're going to load back up. You're going to call a heli. The heli has to come to you. The heli is going to land in a landing zone. And then when you land at the landing zone, you have to traverse back to your team. You not only have to worry about other players around the map hearing the helicopter, but you also have to worry about the AI in between you and your friends. So it might not be just like an easy, get your stuff, get on the helicopter, and then get back to your friends. It could be a very big obstacle in the way. And I feel like with that obstacle, it's not going to make it to where it's a never-ending battle. I think it's going to be still rewarding and not totally deflating the balloon. But I also think it's still going to be devastating to die just because there's so many different options and variables that can happen. Guys, if you are enjoying the video and want to keep up with Gray Zone news and content, consider subscribing, giving it a like. I would greatly appreciate it. So we've talked about the PvE and how it is the focus, but they did talk about a little bit of PvP within the interview, and I want to talk about it a little bit. So Mara said within the first year, they need to fully expect, and people should expect this, is that the game will be unbalanced at first because they don't have enough data to balance everything. They have internal testers, and it's not even going to compare to the data they're going to get when early access arises, and there's, thousands and thousands of people, playing the game. So they need to be, you need to be conscious of that, be like, hey, the game's not going to be balanced at first and stuff like that. Now, also, the game will not have gun cases or boxes, so you won't have to so speaking of what we talked about earlier, like deflating the balloon, they want to talk about the balance of oh, who cares if I die, or oh my gosh, I just die every time, I don't have anything. So with no boxes to put guns and stuff in, the only boxes they're going to have is for med kit and something else. I can't remember what it was. They're not going to have cases of guns, so you're not going to be able to store hundreds and hundreds of guns, and who cares if I die, it doesn't matter. So it's going to be meaningful to die and to live each and every raid that you're out there. And talking about PvP with a spice, so Mara did talk about how the game will naturally create hot zones based on certain locations with better loot. So you'll have different places where the loot will be better. You'll have to kill maybe a boss or something like that. And that will attract people, that want PvP, that want to consistently get PvP because they know that there's good loot there and people will go there to get that loot or kill that boss or whatever it may be. So there's going to be chances for people that really don't want to experience PvP that often, but still want to be in those PvP servers to kind of maneuver around the map in a way that doesn't directly put them necessarily at a higher chance to be in PvP. But for people that do want to enjoy PvP or do want to interact in PvP, they can go to these places and have a higher chance of interacting with other players for loot or gear or bosses, whatever it may be. They also did talk about, they are focused on, it's a PvEVP game, but what they did talk about as far as PvP was concerned, they talk about maybe making something like Tarkov Arena where there's smaller maps where people can just go in and kind of fight each other. But also, which I really was glad to hear, is that if they feel after the balancing and everything, the stability is taken care of, they want to talk about potentially in the future increasing the player count for the original map. That would be a really good thing, in my opinion, if they decided they needed that, because PvP would become more natural and not just running to a specific spot to get it, but maybe more natural on the map, and it would be more fun because you're kind of walking around, you don't know where they are. Obviously, you might know who AI is, but you don't know where the players are. If they do need to increase the players and they have that vision to do that, I feel like it's a great idea, and I'm so glad that they're open. Custom servers. So this is one of the coolest things that I heard about in this interview and what they did talk about. So potentially in the future, and this probably goes way down the road, past 1.0 potentially, but they did talk about the possibility, and they want to do this, is that for DayZ, for example, they want players to be able to rent their own servers and then have their own community and be able to run it to where they see fit. They have moderators, they have a community, they can set certain rules, that you can have role play. I like to think of it as GTA RP, where people have these Discord servers and they have 5M where they run their communities and they can have their own experience however they see fit to do so. Also, tying into this, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, is cheating. When you talk about having a custom server, the cheating aspect goes way down, because you can have these moderators, and any suspicious activity, they can just kick them not out of, Gray Zone permanently, but out of their server. So it becomes a lot more fun and more fair playing field when you're able to run these custom servers, have these certain things that you need to do, and you can kick people out if they're sketchy. And not only the cheating aspect, but to continue on what I talked about GTA RP, is that you can have a full, milsim server where you can have serious people, you can have role play for different things within that server. The possibilities are absolutely endless with custom servers, and I feel like it's just so cool that they even mentioned that. Now, another thing they did mention, and I don't know if this is going to be, I would imagine it's just going to be for custom servers. That's why I put it together with this, thing, is they want to implement like a free camera. So like the eye in the sky where you can like roam around and people can like narrate battles, or like for content creation, right? You can like pan over a city and do like a storytelling aspect of the game, or you just want to have cool things with your friends where your friends get together in a custom server and you have this battle and you can play it out and you can see all these different angles, and maybe it even ties into esports. I feel like the possibilities are absolutely endless with like a free roam camera, and I thought that was really, really cool that they even considered that and putting it on the table at all. I did want to mention that I did create a Discord community to get people together to play Gray Zone, build a community, share friends looking for squad, all that fun stuff. And if you're interested, the link will be in the description down below. Okay, so moving on to wipes within the game. Not only wipes, but I want to talk about the approach to the missions that they have. So with wipes, it's just going to be like every other wipe where, your progress is, deleted or whatever. Everything out of your stash is gone, or, you're starting from scratch, essentially. So just like any other game, will have the wipes. Now, what they also talked about, and Mara has went back and forth with his team, that they rotate the factions. So they rotate their starting position on the map. And so that could give you a different experience because you'll have a different starting zone, you have a different landscape, you have different things like that. So if you want to experience a wipe differently, you can just pick a different faction, or, stay in that faction where it rotates, and you can have a different experience. Now, they have talked about this in the future. They have went back and forth about having different missions for each different faction. And this is way in the future. This is not early access stuff. But I think it would be really cool because, you have a different experience every wipe. You're like, hey, I can do, this faction once, or this faction once, or this faction once. And if they're rotating and you have different starting missions, it's like a different experience every single wipe, rather than just, you have a wipe, you do the same exact thing over and over and over again. So I thought that was really cool that they wanted to, mix a player experience up and potentially give us different missions, different storylines, and different starting locations. I feel like that's extremely cool because you can experience wipes in a different way. Now, also going off that, I want to talk about missions because we talked about starting missions. So their approach to missions are a little bit different. Basically, when you go into missions, you're going to have think about it like a pamphlet, right? That these PMCs are getting. You're going to get like approximate location. You're going to get, hey, this person drives a black car. There's this graffiti on the house. You're going to get approximate location, maybe like pictures that show certain things, and you're going to get a little bit more information, because what they talked about is like with Tarkov and the wiki, right? So people that come into the game that are new or just have come back to the game after a very long time, the game gives you so little information that you don't even know what to do. So you just directly go to the wiki. So with Gray Zone, they're going to try to give you, ample information, which is real life. Like PMC companies are not just going to go in blind. They're going to have enough appropriate information to go through a mission and complete it. I thought that was really cool. They're going to give you enough information where you don't have to reach out to the wiki because they want you to stay in the game, which I totally understand. Because if you don't know how to do the mission, you're going to go to the wiki and you're going to not play the game. They want you to be in the game the whole time and experiencing it the whole time. So I feel like with this information that they give you, little pamphlets, that it's going to make you want to stay in the game and want to learn and want to like discover it on your own. It's not going to be extremely hard that you have to go look at a wiki, but they don't want to make it so easy that it's just, incredibly boring. They want to have that, kind of balance. And I hope they get that right with the missions, because that does seem very cool and exciting. So talking about the vision of the game and feedback. So Mar talks about like feedback, because there's been a lot of companies in the past that it seems like they cater the feedback, or they value the feedback to more of like content creators or people that play the game a lot rather than just casual people. So what they talked about is they don't want to change the game. They want to improve it, and being, making micro adjustments, and it has to be within their original vision, and then make small adjustments really helps, because it doesn't give one group or the other an advantage, because if it's not aligned with what their vision is, it doesn't matter who says it, they won't change it. So they're going to make micro adjustments. So Touch Up was cool because it gives everybody a level playing field, and they have input, and they will be heard. Another thing as far as their vision goes is that the first year that they're going to be developing a game, they're going to be focusing on optimizing and stabilizing the game. So making a stable and optimized game, which I think is very, very important, because obviously there's probably going to be problems within the first week or weeks or wherever it may be with the game. It is an early access. They don't know how many people are going to play the game, and totally understand that and appreciate that. But at a certain point, You want the game to run and be optimized the best that it can. And I feel like them focusing on that the first year is a great sign, because once they stabilize and optimize it, after they get that out of the way, they're going to be doing nothing but focusing on new and fresh content for us. And I feel like that's what people want to see, is fresh and engaging content. The last thing that I want to talk about is the approach to cheating, and then the release date or potential release date. I want to talk about that at the very end. But with their approach to cheating, they think, or keep saying they, but I mean Mara. Mara talked about how with the emphasis on PvE instead of PvP, there might be less cheating just because of that. There is a high stakes game, but a lot of people just want that PvP, that rush, taking other people's stuff like that. So he talked about how maybe that might negate some of the cheating. But he also talked about they will have the standard, easy anti-cheat. The interesting thing that they talked about is they will have machine learning to combat some of these cheaters. So they're actually working with a company with machine learning to be able to, have AI and do all that stuff to approach cheating. So they're not only going to have the easy anti-cheat like the standard one, but they're also going to have machine learning. And they think that having a 2-front attack essentially with the easy anti-cheat and the machine learning, that they're going to be able to combat cheating in a better way than maybe some other companies have. And I feel like that's true. If you have 2 options rather than just one, I feel like it gives you a better chance to, stop cheaters and make the experience better for everyone. Now, as far as the release date goes, they do have a date in mind, but they don't know if they're going to hit that date. And the last thing that they want to do, Mara talked about, is they don't want to release the date and say, hey, here's the date, and then they don't make it, which I totally understand, because when you start putting out release dates and then backing out or extending that date, you lose trust in your community, because it's like, oh, well, they're not really going to release it now. Or if we can't even trust them to put out a date, how are we going to trust them to make a great game? So I totally understand and appreciate that they're going to, once they are fully confident in the date that they have set in their mind, that they will, release it to the public and say, hey, this is when we're going to release the game. So it's nice that they do have a date in mind. And I feel like if they have a date in mind, it's not that far. I mean, obviously we consider nobody actually knows, but it's cool to think about that. Hopefully, since they do have a date in mind, it'll be sooner rather than later. And then also Mara talked about how he's real. He's scared, because if you think about the Helldivers experience, they set out this game, they didn't imagine there'd be like 1 million players on the game, and it was unplayable for a little while because the servers just couldn't handle it. So he talked about a very real experience about being scared, which is very, very cool to see, like a CEO and then dev himself or creative director, whatever you want to call him, saying like, hey, I'm scared. So it's cool to see like the human side of these people rather than just a name and then CEO, or just, because a lot of people, I think, take these people as robots. They're just people that make games and they don't do anything else. They're just there to serve us. So I feel like that was cool to him to open up and be like, hey, I'm scared about what's going on because we don't have enough internal testers to have this data. So hopefully they start getting these issues taken care of, and there's, light at the end of the tunnel where they are, fixing less bugs than they're having, that we will have a release date on our hands. But with that being said, guys, I'm Jones and I'm out. Peace.